Hari Om, everyone. Hari Om. Can you all hear me well and see my screen? Okay, Hari Om. Thank you. Hope all of you are doing well and got to spend some time with your family over Thanksgiving. I'm so glad all of you are here early in the morning, especially those who are on the West Coast over here. ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् रामो राजमणिः सदा विजयते रामं रमेशं भजे रामेणाभिहता निशाचरचमू रामाय तस्मै नमः रामान्नास्ति परायणं परतरं रामस्य दासोऽस्म्यहम् रामे चित्तलयः सदा भवतु मे भो राम मामुद्धर समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुश्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Because it has been a long time, more than 12 hours since we met last time, let's do a quick recap of all key topics that we saw yesterday. So this was the dialogue happening between Shvetaketu and Uddalaka Muni. The first teaching that Uddalaka Muni gave Shvetaketu was, O Shvetaketu, when you see this different names and forms, pot, pan, a statue, all of this has come from clay, just like you understand that. When you see the different names and forms of this creation, understand all of it has come from that Sat. There is no other way we will be able to know the origin of creation other than Upanishad Pramana. Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asit. And the next part of that mantra was Ekam Eva Advitiyam. What is the nature of that Sat? It says, don't have your own definition, Shvetaketu. That Sat is of this nature. It is Ekam, it is the same in all human beings, all jivas, inert, sentient, it is a substratum of everything. We chant in Guru Stotram, actually the same idea, Akhanda Mandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. What did my teacher teach? He says, he has turned my attention to that Sat, which is the substratum of this entire creation. living and non-living, sentient and insentient, chara achara. This Sat is a substratum of everything. So this was the second main topic that we saw yesterday. Then came the topic of how this Sat alone has entered into different jivas. Because Sat wanted to become many, it said, I cannot become many just by being the elements. So body is made up of the 5 elements which are there. But in that 5 element, there is a reflection of consciousness. That Sat Vastu gets reflected, and that is how this calcium, carbon, phosphorus is able to get enlivened. Body, which is just matter, it is reflecting sentiency, because it is because of the same Sat which is reflected in this conditioning. Those who are familiar with Vedanta, they will enjoy this, whole discussion. In several other Upanishads also it is said, Atma is Asanga. Right? Atma means that Sat Vastu is Asanga. Limitations of this conditioning don't affect the original. Okay, this is the main thing that we have to keep reflecting upon. Through sadhana, we reduce these limitations. Okay, limitations meaning if mind is agitated, mind is having some bothering thoughts. So through devoted life, we reduce those ups and downs. But knowledge is to understand I am unaffected by any kind of mind. Quiet mind or not quiet mind, I, the consciousness, am unaffected by it. Now, the last part that we saw yesterday was about how this creation becomes grossified. The name was Trivrut Karanam. From consciousness, the 3 elements came about: fire, water, and earth. But they were subtle elements, but they mutually combined between each other and then formed these 5 gross elements. In Chandogya Upanishad, only 3 are mentioned. 2 we have to bring from Taittiriya Upanishad. Okay. Now a little different perspective from what we covered yesterday. The whole purpose of discussing about creation, whole purpose of knowing creation is to create devotion in our heart for Bhagavan. All of you have heard that bhajan, right? Bhavayami Gopala Balam Manasevitam. You have heard that one. What is the next part that comes there? Tatpadam Chintayeyam. What we are doing right now is Tatpada Vichara. That Bhagavan who is appearing in one form is my same Bhagavan who is appearing as his consciousness, who is appearing as his entire creation, who is of the nature of consciousness. So when we say Bhagavan, this idea should be very well rooted in our mind. First is, Bhagavan's true nature is Sat Swarupa. And the conditioning of Bhagavan is this entire creation. So wherever I see creation, there I should see my Bhagavan. Just like wherever I see the sand, right, in that sand castle, wherever I see any name and form, there alone I will see that sand. So in the same way, this entire creation, wherever there is name and form, there I should appreciate presence of my Bhagavan. This brings the sweeter aspect out of this vichara. Otherwise, it looks a little technical topic. Oh, what is it? Sat was there, and then came the 5 elements. What are we trying to accomplish over here? So one is to understand how this process happens, but the application of this is, I should look upon this world as divine. Somebody asked Goswamiji, why is it that you keep doing pranams to everybody? Even in your text, when you start, you do Vandana Prakaranam for so many dohas. First around 30 dohas, only Vandana Prakaranam. He's bowing down to everything in this creation. He says, Siya Rama Maya Sabha Jagajani. I don't see this world as name and form. I see this world as my Bhagwan Rama and my Sita ji. If that I see, I cannot help but do pranam. To everybody, even to those who criticize his work, he does vandana to them also. If you see the invocation verse of Ramcharitmanas, this is the same idea which is mentioned there. Yat satvat amrushaiva bhati sakalam rajjau yatha ahehe brahmaha. What is this creation? Or who is Bhagwan Rama? It says Bhagwan Rama is that Satvastu, borrowing whose existence this entire creation appears to be existent. If you read Bhagavatam, the invocation of Bhagavatam has the same idea. Bhagwan Vedvyasji says, we bow down to that Satvastu, Satyam Param Dhimahi. When you appreciate the grammar, you can appreciate literature more. When you appreciate all the different kinds of alankara that is used, you will enjoy if that alankara shows up somewhere in that poetry, somewhere in that music. Same is with Vedanta also. If you know the intricate details of Upanishad, when you sing a bhajan, when you read devotional text, lot of joy will be there just appreciating how these ideas get echoed there also. But we all know studying grammar is not easy, right? It looks a little tedious. Oh my God, so many rules and this and that. Same thing with Vedanta also. Upanishad Mula Mantra, little bit of difficulty will be there, but the reward is very great. Okay, so this was a summary of what we did yesterday. But if you want to take away the main essence, focus on the devotional part. Whenever we do Tatpada Vichara, culmination of that Tatpada Vichara is in devotion. Okay. Now comes another technique. Upanishad Rishi, Uddalaka Muni, is going to teach Shvetaketu. How do we turn our mind towards this truth? Because all the time we are not at the seat of meditation, right? We are working in the world outside, interacting with people, living our day-to-day life. Is there a technique by which we can shift our attention from name and form and go back to that Satvastu? Raman Maharshi Ji in Upadesha Sara mentions this, but he doesn't elaborate the technique. He says you have to study other Upanishads, you have to study other texts. But over here, I will just say, Eka Chintanat Nashametyadaha. What is Eka Chintanam? So that is this technique. What is that method of inquiry by which I can take my attention from manyness to that one truth? Very simple method, nothing very complicated. You say we have so many objects of this world that we see, right? Take a tree, for example. When I see that tree, what I'm seeing right there is name and form. So my first step towards shifting attention to that Satvastu is to dissolve this name and form into its constituent elements. Name and form is nothing but just a word. Vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam. What is actually there is only earth element, water element, and fire element. Even if you take it in our general parlance, this part we understand, right? What is tree made up of? It is made up of earth. Earth element, that seed alone has become that tree. And inside that tree, you'll find water. Water is also there. That's how it is getting its nourishment from. And there is heat in that tree. what we otherwise call as kinetic energy, right? What holds particles together is this heat. So these three elements, if you recognize, what I call as tree, that name and form will just vanish. Okay, I will realize that tree is only a word. What is actually there is these three elements. So this name and form can be many, trees can be many, but what is really there is only three things. We have narrowed down or not? From infinite, we narrowed down to three. Now, Upanishad Rishi will say, narrow down even further. From these three, inquire into where these three elements have come from. It has come from that Sat alone. Okay? That Sat is of the nature of existence. This is a method, this is a technique that a sadhaka is expected to follow, to practice, and to increase this ability to see things in this way. We have mastered so many skills, right? If somebody is really good in a profession, just by looking at something, they can tell what is wrong in that thing. Especially those who are in civil engineering. You show them a beam, they will show there is a crack in that beam. And they will say, that this thing is buckling down, and so many things they will say. How did they develop that ability? So just by practice, they paid keen attention to the method of how to identify those faults and so on. Over here also, this is not something we will be born with. Looking at name and form, shifting attention to Sat Vastu. Once we have understood this, we'll have to gradually think about it, reflect about it, and then cultivate this practice. Okay, so the same technique now, Upanishad will use very simple examples. Example is of fire, example is of sun, okay, of moon and of thunder. But what is the main idea? When you see a name and form, recognize that all this name and form is nothing but three elements. From those three elements, go back to Sat. Okay. This we can repeat. Yadagne rohitam rupam, yadagne rohitam rupam, tejasastadrupam, tejasastadrupam, yat shuklam tadapam, yat shuklam tadapam, yat krishnam tadannasya apagat, yat krishnam tadannasya apagat, agneragmitvam, agneragmitvam, vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam, vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam, त्रीणि रूपाणीत्येव सत्यम, त्रीणि रूपाणीत्येव सत्यम. Now you are familiar with this. Same mantra will get repeated. Just example is changing, so we can chant together from here. Yadadityasya rohitam rupam, tejasastadrupam, yat shuklam tadapam, yat krishnam tadannasya apagat, आदित्यादादित्यत्वं वाचारम्भणं विकारो नामधेयं त्रीणि रूपाणीत्येव सत्यम्. यच्छन्द्रमसो रोहितं रूपं तेजसस्तद्रूपं यच्छुक्लं तदपां यत्कृष्णं तदन्नस्य अपागात् चन्द्राच्चन्द्रत्वं वाचारम्भणं विकारो नामधेयं त्रीणि रूपाणीत्येव सत्यं. यद्विद्युतो रोहितं रूपं तेजसस्तद्रूपं यच्छुक्लं तदपां यत्कृष्णं तदन्नस्य अपागात् विद्युतो विद्युत्वं वाचारम्भणं विकारो नामधेयं त्रीणि रूपाणीत्येव सत्यम्. Same idea now. Very simple examples are there. Main thing is go beyond name and form of that object. Don't get stuck by only name and form. Go beyond it. But what do we mean by going beyond it? Recognize three elements, and from those three elements, go to Sat. Now, Upanishad is giving even simpler method of how to recognize the three elements. The classical method is every element has its own guna, its own property. The guna, the property of earth element is fragrance. Okay, wherever you see fragrance, there you say this is coming from earth element. The property of water element is taste. Unless water is there, we cannot taste anything. Have you had some milk powder sometime? Just a spoon of milk powder. When you have it right at that moment, you don't taste anything. Unless the water gets mixed up, there is no taste over there. And fire element, the property is form. Wherever you see a form, there fire element is there inside. It might not be manifest, but it is there. But somebody says this is so complicated, every time I have to think element, property, and so on. Upanishad says there is an easier method. Let us take colors and just map it to colors. Any object you take, whatever red color you find there, understand this red color comes from fire element. Look around you, different objects. Do you see redness in those objects somewhere? Reddish color. Some of you are searching. That red color comes from fire element. Whatever is white in color comes from water element. Okay? And whatever is blackish in color, grayish in color, that comes from earth element. So what I'm seeing is a name and form. Upanishad says, boil it down to elements, just map it to colors, and say whatever is red is fire, whatever is white is water, whatever is black is earth element. All of this has come from that Sat only. Okay, so this is the chain of thought. So in this fire also you see some red, some white, and some grayish thing, right? So with that we should recognize presence of elements, or in fact that element alone is appearing as this fire. Okay, what I call as fire is nothing but the fire element, water element, and earth element. Now comes the sun. That is the second example. Beautiful sunset you see. So those of you who are going out for Thanksgiving, for a drive, or wherever you go, meditate upon nature in this way. Look at the nature, appreciate its beauty, but internally shifting attention to these three elements, and then finally back to that Satvastu. So whatever red is there in the sun has come from fire. Whatever white color you see has come from water. Grayish, dark color has come from earth element. Okay, two examples. Now, third example is of moon. Okay, same mantra only. I'm just explaining over here. In moon also, if you notice the reddish part which is there, it says that has come from fire. The white portion in the moon has come from water element, and the dark portion, the grayish portion, has come from earth element. Now these are just few examples which are taken. Upanishad is taking few examples, but we can take any other example. Everything will boil down to the same method. Last example is of thunder. Vidyuta means thunder. In thunder also, whatever the reddish portion is there, it has come from fire element. The white portion which is there, that has come from water, and the dark grayish portion has come from earth element. So in this way, whatever names and forms you see, boil it down to elements and then shift attention to Sat. But simpler method given in this Upanishad is by using colors. So we don't have to worry too much about too many technicalities. But there is an elaborate discussion about why these colors, why they are relevant, and so on. Either we have faith and we go ahead and benefit, because the point is not to say how colors map. Point is just to give a method so that our attention can get shifted back to Sat Vastu. And that Sat, if you want to make it sweeter, say it is my Bhagavan. I am seeing name and form, but with this method, I can shift attention to my Bhagavan. Okay, the main summary from this entire Tatpada Vichara, okay, main takeaway is the substratum of this creation is not atom. Substratum of this creation is not something else which is also a matter. Substratum of this creation is Sat Vastu, which is of the nature of existence, consciousness, and bliss. This part you remember because when we come to Mahavakya, this concept we will again bring back. Substratum of this creation is Sat. That is what we have to remember. And with this method which was pointed out, Upanishad says, go beyond the name and form of every object in the same way. You say, every object, can you give an example of more simpler object? You say, yes, you take a mango. Okay, mango is something, if you like, if you don't like, then, you'll not, it doesn't matter whether you go back to Sat or not, if it's not something that you like. But let us say you like a mango and you are really wanting to have that mango. Before you eat it, put some effort, just to recognize whatever red color is there in this mango has come from fire element. Whatever white is there has come from water. Whatever dark element part is there, the color. We are not going into any technicalities, only the color. These three colors have come from these three elements. So this mango is nothing but fire, water, earth. Substratum of that is that same Satvastu. After that, you eat it. Okay, swaha. But you'll realize just doing this small, switch brings some depth in our perspective of life, perspective of different objects which are there around us. And as I mentioned earlier, it will not happen naturally. It will not happen all of a sudden. It's a gradual process. But more we cultivate it, more we will benefit. Can you give another example where I should do this? You say, yes. This physical body which is there, that also is name and form. Upanishad will take that separately, but it is said everything in this creation, if you can, bring back to three elements and then go back to Sat. Do the same first for this body also. This we can appreciate or not. What is body made up of? We say it is made up of annam. Earth element is there. What food we eat becomes this physical body. Water, 70% of this body is made out of water. Fire element is there. If it goes a little high, not very good. If it goes low, I start shivering. So the whole point is what I call as this body, what I call as me, myself, right? We say it is nothing but three elements. Where did they come from? They came from that Satvastu. Even if we come from this step number 1 to step number 2, right? Coming from this body to these three elements, we have accomplished a long journey. Okay? Even if we don't go to Sat as of now, even to think about this body as just this matter, it is, very good. Now remember I had said Drugdrishya Viveka also has its root in Chandogya Upanishad. That is this topic over here. Whenever you might have studied some Vedanta text, they would have spoken about Viveka, right? Tattva Bodha or any other text you studied, they spoke about Viveka. Which Viveka was spoken about? Atma, Anatma Viveka. But when you study Upanishad, that same Viveka, the meaning of that Viveka will get fine-tuned. So what are we doing Viveka between now? Between Sat, which is Atma, and name and form, which is Anatma. Okay, so whenever we see anything in this creation, it could be a simple thing, like a coffee mug in front of you. They're recognizing that there is existence over here, and then it is having a name and form. Oh, I don't know how this jump came about. Go step by step. Go to elements and then go to this name and form. But once you're familiar with it, you can directly go to the main step. From existence, you are seeing this name and form. Similarly, anything in this creation. That's why I said whoever is going out just for a Thanksgiving outing or anything. In addition to everything that we will do, spend some time on this technique. Drigdrishya Viveka, this is called as one form of meditation. Meditation with eyes open. Okay. How are you meditating? You are just looking at this world, looking at names and forms. And internally, you are shifting attention to that substratum, Satvastu. It is easier if that name and form is non-bothering. Okay. That is why in nature, it's very easy to start meditating upon. If you take a mango or a coffee, then before you do any of this meditation, already mind has gone somewhere else. Sattvic things are easier to begin with. That is why we say nature is good. Okay. There is another point which comes to the mind of sadhaka. Whenever we discuss, right, that Jagat is mithya, Jagat is an appearance, you say, I have so much of my other responsibilities I have to take care of. Vedanta has no idea what all things I need to take care of. And you keep telling that Jagat is mithya, everything is vacharambanam, go to elements. I'm not able to connect with it. That is how many sadhakas feel. So what is a perspective for that kind of thought if we have? So that also we should reflect upon. How to balance between Vyavahara and Paramartha. The best perspective we can find in Ramcharitmanas. Okay. So in between I have to bring some chaupais from Ramcharitmanas because there are many Manas Premis over here. They do a lot of, study of Ramayana. So Goswamiji says, there is this confluence of rivers happening. What are the rivers? He says one is Gangaji. She is flowing in between. Juga bicha bhagati deva dhuni dhara. Okay, so Gangaji represents bhakti, devotion. Okay. Sohati sahita subirati bichara. What are the other two rivers? One is Saraswati ji. Another river is Yamuna ji. But what is happening? All these two tributaries which are there, these two other rivers which are there, they are coming and joining Gangaji. And Gangaji finally is going and merging in the ocean. Okay. Trivida tapa trasakati mohani Rama sarupa sindhu samuhani. Now, what is the analogy for? What is the purpose of this metaphor? We say our life should be like this confluence. Okay. One part of our life should be doing constant satsang, increasing our viveka. Because there is no other way by which we will get these perspectives. Right? Have you ever heard about three elements in any other conversation? at work or anywhere else with friends? Nowhere, right? Doing Viveka, no, nowhere we will be hearing these things. So one aspect of our life should be in doing satsang. So Saraswati ji should flow in our life. Another part is Yamuna ji. Yamuna ji means living a dharmic life. All of us are placed in different places in our life. We are given different roles and responsibilities in our life. Doing that sincerely, that itself is our dharma. Without getting too carried away by anything and without developing some aversion towards anything. Sincerely doing our duties, but not anyhow, but sweetening that duty by devotion to Bhagavan. So Gangaji also should flow in our life. That will be the sweet confluence. When that happens, this place of confluence is called as Prayagraj. Okay? That is a pilgrimage spot. The life of this sadhaka becomes very divine. But we should remember, the purpose of doing all these things is to merge in our own Sat Swarupa, is to recognize our Sat Swarupa, that is this ocean. Okay? If Gangaji says, I will not flow, I will just stop over here, he says it has not fulfilled its journey. It has to go and merge in that Sat Swarupa. So what was the main point we were discussing? How do I balance my Vyavahara and Paramartha? So the takeaway is, make Vyavahara so beautiful. Make our Vyavahara so non-bothering that it leads us into abiding in Paramartha. It is not that I'm using Paramartha for Vyavahara. Okay? My current ways of living should align my journey towards my higher nature, towards devotion to Bhagavan, everything. Because there is no other way by which we'll be free from all sorrows. Okay? This was just a side perspective about Vyavahara and Paramartha. If we miss this point, right? If we put Vyavahara above Paramartha, Bhagavan does not like it. You know why I'm saying that? All of you must be familiar with Bhagavan Krishna's Leelas, right? In Bhagavatam. One of the Leela is Shakatasura. That cart he flips apart, right? He flips that entire cart. He kicks that cart. Why did he kick? One is Shakatasura stayed in that cart. But another thing is, Mother Yashoda put him beneath the cart. And for Gopabalas, their wealth is milk, yogurt, ghee, all those things. That is their, Vyavahara. That is their transaction. That was kept above. Bhagwan was made to sleep below. So you are keeping me below and putting all the Vyavahara on top of me. That portion I don't like. And then he makes it in the right order. Keep me as the higher goal and look at your entire Vyavahara in that light. Now this Upanishad, Rishi says that how does this knowledge express in a wise person? All this Trivrit Karanam, everything, it is not some intellectual, inquiry. It actually reflects in our own transaction. But how does it reflect? He says it reflects as contentment. Okay, let us see. Together we will chant. Etadhasmavai tad vidvamsa ahuhu purve mahashalaha mahashrotriyaha na no adya kaschana ashrutam amatam avidnyatam udaharishyatiti kebhyo vidan chakruhu. With this knowledge, Mahashalaha means great grihasthas who have done a lot of social work, started schools, hospitals, a lot of social work, but they made sure that they have spirituality as the backbone. So their perspective of life was such, if anybody comes to them and says, oh, there is something exciting that is going to come up, like how we have this phone release, right? I don't know the latest version, but next release of this iPhone is going to come. You say, what is it? Fire, water, earth. You know, all of that has come from that Sat only. There is nothing in this creation which is unknown to me. Mahashrotriyaha, those who are full time into Shravanam, Mananam, who are more withdrawn, both these people had this knowledge with them. Contentment is something which helps us go towards our goal at the right pace. If somebody is discontent, then they will helplessly get drawn towards even material goals. So if contentment is there, then that person goes towards that, whatever goals we have in life, at a very healthy pace. He says that is the immediate benefit of this knowledge. There is nothing in this world that is unknown, nothing in this world that is different from these three elements and Sat. Kaschana ashrutam, unheard of, amatam, unthought of, avijñātam, unknown, nothing is there. And with this, these wise people were very, very content. And then everything which was known in this creation, they understood that to be nothing but three elements. Because sometimes you might have this question, what if something is not in these three colors? If it is in between color, right? Not red, not white, not black. You see, in between everything you take, whatever that color is, it is nothing but three elements only. Okay? That is what this fourth mantra or the sixth mantra, that is the summary. I'll have to jump a little bit in mantras. Those which are not having a lot of new points, I will do that. And last one, now Upanishad Rishi is saying that just like you recognize these three elements in this world, these three elements are there in you also. Shvetaketu, your body, what you call as I, it is nothing but three elements. Your mind, which you say is me, myself. Say, no, that mind is not you. That mind is made up of one of this element. So now to explain that comes the next portion of Upanishad. This is called as Tvam Pada Vichara. Okay? Recognizing three elements in this physical body, in me, myself. But not only stopping there, shifting attention to Sat Vastu. That is what we want to accomplish. This is a most favorite portion of everybody because it talks about food, water, and fire. Fire means oily things, okay, what we eat. So whenever you ask somebody, what is that thing you remember about Chandogya Upanishad? Oh, it talks about food. Whatever you eat, that makes the mind. That is this portion, so pay attention. Annamasitam tredha vidhiyate tasya yah stavishto dhatuhu tatpurisham bhavati yo madhyamah tan mamsam yo anishtah tan manah apah pritas tredha vidhiyante tasam yah stavishto dhatuhu tanmutram bhavati yo madhyamah tallohitam yo anishtah sapranah tejo ashitam tredha vidhiyate tasya yah sthavishto dhatuhu tadasti bhavati yo madhyamah samajja yo anishtah savak annamayam hi somya manah apomayah pranah tejomayi vagiti bhuya evama bhagavan vijñāpayatu iti tatha somyeti ho vacha. So now Upanishad Rishi will point out how these three elements are there in me, myself, in what form are they appearing. Okay, so each mantra I will take on a separate slide and we can reflect upon it. So Shvetaketu, let us start with something which is very well known to us. You say, how is this body formed? We know it very well. It is formed by the food that we eat. But have we thought about what happens to the food after we eat? So Upanishad Rishi says, hear from me what happens to this food that we eat. Annam ashitam tredha vidhiyate. Bhagwan's system is so beautiful inside. This annam that we eat gets split into three parts. The first part is a gross part, which is rejected out of this body. Majority of it is rejected out of this body. And every thing which is there in Bhagwan's creation, right, it is very well thought of. He says, we cannot just keep eating. There should be things which are, given away. So that is the gross part of this body which gets rejected. The in-between part, the medium part of this body, that becomes the nutrition for this body. Okay, whatever things that we check on our health report, right? All the things, whether this I am eating or that I am eating, iron, all those things, calcium. So whatever nutrition is there, that is this in-between part of this body, of this food that we eat. But the last part, there are three parts, right, to this food. The subtlest part nourishes the mind. Okay? Means the thoughts that we have, lot of it is connected to the food that we eat. Most of you might have heard these statements from your grandparents or even parents, or even now you might be using it. Jaisa anna, vaisa man. Just as is our food, so is our thought. Just as our food, so is our thought, so is our mind. So Shvetaketu, recognize this. If you can, use it for sadhana and make sure that you purify the mind by eating good food. Now, what do we mean by subtle part of food? So there are several aspects to it, because food is same for everybody. It means when you have it in the farm, when you have it outside, right? There is no difference in the crop that is growing out there. But when it comes to our plate, what this Upanishad says is, different people will have different kind of thoughts, because there is something happening in between, because of which the food is affecting everybody in different ways. So what happened in between? One is the emotions that went into cooking. Right? With what mind did we cook that food? Was there some thought of agitation or some kind of other thing which was going on in the mind? He says the food will gather that quality. Subtle part of that food will gather that quality, and whoever eats that will have the same quality. Now, this is a good news, right? Because if you can take care about emotions in food, have good emotions, then food naturally will have good, or have the ability to produce good thoughts. This I have seen in myself, that whenever you go to a temple, the food is so simple, right? Sometimes it is different type of rice, right? Different colored rice, but there is a different flavor to it. Okay, the whole thing is because it is made as prasad. That bhavana which is there, that nourishes the subtle part of this food. That is why we say whenever we cook, put some stotram. If we cannot chant, just let it play in the background. Listen to some discourse. I know many of you listen in that way only, while chopping, while making chapati, rotis. It is very appreciable. One is you are not missing the lecture, and another is that food is having very good subtle aspect. And this you cannot prove by science. Okay? These things are Upanishad pramana. If we have that reverence, faith in Upanishad, we should try it and benefit from this. Okay, one aspect of food is it should be cooked with good thoughts. If you go to a restaurant, right, outside, you might have very good nutrition value. It might be very organic. It would be having all other things which are very well balanced. But it does not guarantee the subtle part. Person who is making that food, emotions they have might be very different. So that is why home cooked food, is much better than outside. Okay, this is the first part, emotions that go into cooking. Second part is the means by which that food is procured. Means that money by which that food is procured. If there is some ashuddhi, impurity in that, thoughts which are created by eating that food will not be very auspicious. Now, this example we find in Mahabharata. Okay, there is one story that goes that when Bhishma Pitamaha was on his deathbed, on that bed of arrows, he was there. Yudhishthira comes to him and he gives Shanti Parva, lot of teachings about dharma and everything. Bhishma Pitamaha gives to Yudhishthira. Draupadi was standing right next to him. And looking at Draupadi, Bhishma understands she is seeking an answer. And this answer is of what had happened earlier, in that court and everything. So why did you not say something? Why were you so quiet in spite of all those things Kauravas were doing? And it is that Bhishma says this line, that I was eating Duryodhana's food. So all the good qualities which were there, they were as though hidden. My thinking was not as clear. And that reflected in different decisions that I made. But all in all, now we should not go into debate of whether Bhishma was right, Bhishma was wrong. That is not the point. The main point is what he wants to say there is the importance given to the purity in food, the means by which that food is procured, and how we have what perspective we have towards that food. Now somebody might say, my life will become so difficult if every time I have to worry about who has cooked the food, whether the means by which it is procured is pure or not. How will I even eat every time if I start checking these things? I have to travel for work, I have to go out, I have to eat outside also many a times. What can I do? So Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji writes in Bhagavad Gita, Bhashya, if you take Bhagwan's name at the beginning of eating, Anna Kruta Dosha, that is removed. Whatever impurities might be there, whatever shortcomings might be there, everything is taken away if you just take Bhagwan's name. That is why we chant Brahmarpanam, Annapurne Sadapurna, whatever you are chanting. Yajna Shishta, many of you chant. Just a minute. I know it magnifies on this one. If you can bring that water. Okay, so this is the aspect about food. We can use it for sadhana also, but the main thing is to understand that mind is nothing but matter. So Shvetaketu, understand how is this earth element present in this body? It is present as mind. It is present as this physical body also. Okay, Annamayam hi somya manaha. That is the first part. Then Upanishad Rishi says, Shvetaketu, have you thought what happens to the water that we drink? Shvetaketu says, no, I just drank water like this. There is some water. What happened to the water that we drink? He says water also gets divided into three parts. What are those three parts? First one is the gross part, which is again rejected out of this body. And Bhagwan's creation also is, wonderful. No matter which drink you drink, inside there is a system to separate out these things. The in-between part, the medium part, becomes the blood in this body. Okay? And the third part, which is the subtlest part, becomes prana. So later on, there is going to be a fasting experiment. Now, the whole Upanishad is very fun Upanishad. All different examples, all different experiments. So Upanishad Rishi says, if you keep drinking water, your pranas will continue. But if you don't eat, then your memory will go down. Your abilities of the mind will start fading away. Okay, so what happens to the water that we drink? Apaha pitaha tredha vidiyante tasam yaha stavishtaha dhatuhu tan mutram bhavati. One part is rejected out, the medium part becomes blood, and the subtlest part becomes prana. What is the main point here? That Shvetaketu recognize the presence of water element. You are recognizing pranas, right? It is difficult to recognize prana, but at least we know that there is energy which is there in this body. Nourishment of that energy comes from water. From water, you shift attention to Sat. But at least recognize water, in the physical body. Okay. Now the last part, fire element. So Shvetaketu, have you noticed or have you thought about what happens to the oily things that we eat? So, oh, this part I like. Is Upanishad saying we can eat oily things? It says those things which have natural oil in them. Okay, like walnuts or any omega-3 that we eat. So it has healthy oil, right? So those things, whatever oil we eat, or even other oily things, ghee in particular, what happens to that? The gross portion of that becomes our bones. Gross portion of the oily thing becomes our bone. The medium portion becomes marrow. And the subtlest portion of the oil, the fire element that we eat, becomes speech. In some traditions, for small children, as they are growing up, for speech to develop well, they make them eat ghee. Give a small spoon of ghee. The point is the same, that ghee has fire element. That fire element has direct connection with our speech. Even colloquially we say, right? He gave a fiery speech. Right? What was the fire element there? He said it was just a way of expression, but in Upanishad it is said there is a connection between our speech and the fire element. Now, don't go into the debate of whether ghee is good or not good. It is only about saying that which is made in a systematic process. It has its own value. That process is bypassed many a times, making it from milk, then to yogurt, and then to butter, and then boiling it, and then coming to that ghee. So Ayurveda, whoever is familiar with it, they encourage a lot, in controlled measure, of course. But anyway, you consult your own doctor. I am no authority in whether ghee is good or not. But the thing to appreciate here is, using those things which we are familiar with in this body, Upanishad Rishi is saying, recognize presence of elements. Through those elements, shift your attention back to Sat. Okay? This is the main summary. Don't miss the main point. Annamayam hi somya manaha, apomayah pranaha, tejomayi vagiti. O Shvetaketu, recognize that mind is nothing but modification of food element. Pranas are nothing but modification of water, and speech is nothing but modification of fire element. Now Shvetaketu says, "Oh teacher, I did not understand. Teach me again." Interestingly, he does not say what he did not understand. You see the last part? Bhuya eva ma bhagavan vijñapayatu iti tatha somyeti hovacha. He says, "Oh teacher, teach me again." So what should I teach? So many things I said from the beginning. What did you not understand? So all these connections, Bhagwan Shankaracharya will give in Bhashya. And now he's asking different questions. That, please explain this to me. What do you mean by the subtle portion rising up? Can you give an example to show? And then Upanishad Rishi also gives many other examples from day-to-day life that will help us shift our attention from name and form to that Satvastu. Okay, so we'll pause here. The portion from here on, we'll see in the evening session. So as I mentioned last time, spend some time just going through these verses again. We will not be able to cover everything in this verse, in particular the mantras. Wherever important ones are there, I highlighted that we can go deeper. But if you just glance through the verses, again, these ideas will keep coming back. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.